Hello and welcome, I'm Pufscruz the Red. Today we'll be going over settings in squad and what does what exactly. And to make things more simpler and less boring than making a 45 documentary video of what settings to run in squad, I'll be going over three main things. Firstly, we're going to be talking about squad's graphic setting guide they posted on Steam. And then I'll go over some must-have settings on or off. And then I'll do a quick guideline of what does what and then my personal recommendation of what settings to run if you're able to run those settings. My main goal is to make this a quick little video and just try to help out some guys and help answer some questions about what settings to run as a whole. If this video does help out in any form or way, please leave a like and leave a comment down below. If there's any unanswered questions, let me know down below as well, and I'll respond back to you guys when I can. Let's get into it. And firstly, before we go into squad, let's take a quick look and take a quick talk over the squad settings guide. They pretty much talk about support. But the major thing I do want to point out is they shifted some settings around for if you used to run high and medium settings in Unreal 4. It might be some of those settings might not be so high, but some of them might be medium. So you might want to consider lowering your graphic settings as a whole. And talk about tweaking your upscaler resolution in the post as well. And they also talk about global illumination and shadows being very intensive resource-wise. So they also recommend having a little bit lower than normal. And they also talk about frame gen support, and then they also talk about two things for notes. When you first open the game and go into the match, textures might be lower quality, and this just prevents snitching. And the other note they have on the post is talking about weak sim simulation. It's currently bugged and is not recommended to use right now, as they cause a picture-in-picture scope issue where it has a flashing black frame around your optic, which is quite annoying. Then in the returning player section, they talk about clearing a cache out. I'm subscribing for all mods from Steam Workshop, and that's it's just because the Unreal 4 files is still being saved in those, and just some mods are no longer being worked on. So having Unreal 4 files on Unreal 5 can cause some weird issues. Other than that, the only really good note to point out is to use the defaults button. It will run a quick benchmark on your PC and give your own custom preset. I would personally recommend running one tier lower. So if it gives you high, run medium, gives you medium, run low, etc. And after we look over that post, you feel free to look at the post after this video. And before we even play squad or open up squad, let's go to Steam settings real quick. Go to the end game section, scroll about halfway down, you'll find something called overlay performance monitor. Turn that on. It'll just kind of help you monitor what your PC is directing to, what settings you run for squad, in case you want to figure it out. If you need to dial some settings back, maybe your shadows, illumination, or your textures, those are the three biggest settings I would say at this time. And then after that, then we can probably open up squad. And then if you haven't cleared your cache out, clear your cache out. And then we'll go to the graphics settings over here, and we'll hit the default button, and we'll run a quick little benchmark, give it a couple seconds, and then we'll give you a custom preset for your PC. You'll be basically ready to hop into most servers and should have a decent time, right? Well, that will be too easy, and there's three settings. We already talked about wake sim, so that's one setting that's already been talked about. Reflex low latency needs to be enabled. If not, you will experience hitching when you're scoping in optics. And lastly, on-cap texture pool size. This is a very important setting to not have check on, solely because it allows, for whatever reason, it allows your VRAM to have a memory leak, which inevitably allows your game to crash, which is, well, you can't play the game if your game is crashing all the time. In Unreal 4, it was there, but it took several hours. For me, at least, it was taking several hours to occur. In the beta testing for Unreal 5, it was within the match, and even in this example, before I was able to load all the textures in the world from changing the map, it crashed. And less than a minute into the match, it crashed. Aside from those three settings, another must-have setting is your particle quality is set to high. This is not just for better looks of explosions or gunfire or tanks blowing up or tanks firing. This is a must-have setting because it will apply a soft glow, bloom, and lighting around muzzle fire. It is way more noticeable, and it is a on day to night from going from low to high or medium to high alone. So if you don't have it on high, you will probably have a more time struggling trying to pinpoint where you're being fired at, because the glow from the muzzle fire is way more noticeable on high, and you can also see it from a further distance out alone. Um, I have this quick little video right here. I'm about a half mile out, and pretty clear you can see the muzzle fire around the walls and boxes and inside the buildings and under the trees and all that stuff. It makes it really easy. And even in a live game, I was able to have this as an actual use and like show you guys in a real game. I got shot at, so a muzzle flash. Was able to pinpoint that real quick, put some rounds down range, and go over to the mortar, use the mortar, and just put more rounds down range, and hopefully emulate the target that was trying to shoot us on the fob. And then there's 3 other settings that have very little impact on game performance. This is going to be your shaders, which control a little bit of lighting, tint, and trees moving around, and bushes and swaying and grass swaying. It just control the amount of how fast and how active they are. Ocean quality. This can be heavily it just basically allows more polygons, so that way the ocean looks a little bit more realistic in terms of waves. And post-processing quality, I can't really see exactly what it does other than a slight difference of clouds, but it says lens flare and bloom. I just can't really pinpoint that right now. I'm not sure if global illumination does a better job than post-processing, and that's why you can't really see it doing too much. I would just personally recommend whatever your texture setting is set to, have those set to, because apparently when they're mirrored like that, medium, high and high, and low, they tend to perform slightly better. Like we're talking about somewhere between 2 to 6 FPS better. Lastly, we'll go over texture shadows and global illumination. This global illumination will be set to either low or high. Only reason why you would have it on high, because if you don't like the visual look of glass and other transparent objects reflecting light, you will probably need to set this high. And the only other reason why you will probably want to set the high is fog. It does adjust the levels of fog and how fog interacts with you at close range. And there's very few maps that have fog in general. So if you're not bothered by those 2 statements before, I would probably just have it on low. Unless you have another reason. And for shadows, and your low settings is the same as Unreal 4 medium settings, and for medium settings in Unreal 5 is the same as Unreal 4 high settings. And between those low and medium settings, I will probably not really increase it, because after that you're just increasing the draw distance on shadows. And the only reason why I would run high or epic settings for shadows is if you're a tanker or a heli, because it might help break up contrasts on, let's say you're looking for a tan T62 out in the desert, who's hiding behind a small tan hill with a bigger tan hill overcasting him. That small shadow can help break up the contrast and make it easier for you to see him before he can see you. Same thing can be said about green infantry units in a green tree line. If you're trying to land your helicopter in a field, that small shadow could be just enough for you to see them, or even just flying overhead. So it's more useful for armor and heli to have a higher shadow rendered out, because they're at the further range than they're at. For epic shadows, by the way, they render really far out. They can render up to half a mile out. I'm assuming they can go more, but just for the fact that we're at a half mile already, most infantry combat kind of doesn't really go further than 400. I mean, there's some scenarios where you might be, but those are scenarios, not every single time. Mostly, you're probably dealing within 150 to 300 meters for infantry combat if you're not in a town or an urban environment. So I would not really have drawing extra shadows that you're not going to see, if that makes sense. But one thing to note about shadows and texture settings, they also are affected by view distance, and in my testing so far, it seems like they can, if you want to run a higher shadow and texture setting, but you also want to have a more reduced draw cost, when you increase those 2 settings, it will also increase the draw range. The textures setting specifically will also increase the amount of LODs allowed, That way you can mitigate popping of textures. If you're more disturbed by the popping of textures, you might want to increase your texture settings and maybe either increase your view distance before or lower the view distance setting and increase your texture settings.
Hey, when this next time you cannot
That way the immediate area around you isn't popping in and out of quality of textures. And lastly, I didn't really talk about it too much. I didn't really talk about upscaling resolutions. This will be like your DLSS and FRS and XES technology. And I didn't really talk about frame gen. These are totally optional. It's very obvious that when you do use them, you'll get more FPS at a cost of slightly decreased quality visually. That is personally up to your choice. The only thing I would not recommend using is FXAA. It just does not work for a nice clean visual look. And if you plan to use FrameGen or you plan to use TSR, you will have to restart your game at least once after you apply it. And then afterwards, sometimes you don't have to, but it's not perfect. But you can kind of get away swapping between DLSS and TSR without restarting the game sometimes, but sometimes you will have to. Just note that, but you will have to restart it the first time you do want to use it. And then lastly, I did try to make this video several times beforehand, but it was just stupidly long. I don't think you guys are really interested in that video. So I took some screenshots of what I was able to document. I basically ran a low preset, medium preset, and a high preset. I didn't run a epic preset because my GPU is 3070 and it just was not living life. I can tell you that much. And I used DLA because I didn't want to use any upscaling or frame gen support to boost numbers. This is as close as to native I can get it. And this is pretty much how it went. Low settings was pretty playable for me. Medium settings were pretty playable. High settings, I probably would have to tone some things back. Maybe my shadows. I know low shadows right now in the game looks pretty clean as so far. And I'd probably recommend medium settings at best. If you don't like your shadow quality look on low, medium or high would probably be the most optimal one. And just depending what type of player you are. If you're more of an armor player, probably run high. If you're more infantry, probably use medium for shadows in that regard. And that's it. Hopefully this video has been a food of thought to help you guys in optimizing your game and how to optimize your game in the future. And hopefully this guide has taught and showcased some issues that wasn't very obvious or apparent before. So thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day, and Peter out. Yeah, so I'm stuck in the 5% reason.
Oh my god, just kill him. Otherwise we'll have to dig it down.
Oh, hold on, I got it.